It's U of L Today on 93.9 The Ville. Here's your host, Mark Hebert.
And welcome to UofL Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. This is the show that's all about everything going on at the University of Louisville, where we talk to great researchers and students and faculty members about what they are doing at the University of Louisville and how it impacts you and the state of Kentucky. So what do we got on the show today? Well, every year the University of Louisville picks two students that they call Mr. and Ms. Cardinal, and it's based on how active they are on campus, how active they are in the community, and things they do to promote the University of Louisville. So you'll meet Mr. and Ms. Cardinal 2018-19 when coming up just a little bit later on the show. But first, Jasmine Farrier is the head of U of L's political science department. She is the chair. She's also a prolific writer. She's written a bunch of stuff about the Constitution, Congress, the presidency, and with all that's going on in the world right now, Jasmine Farrier has got a boatload of material to work with, so I decided to have her on the show. So Jasmine Farrier, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Mark.
Glad you're here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well let's get right into it. All right, let's hit him hard, punch him right in the nose, right off the top. We know what's going on with the declaration of by the president of an emergency on our southern border, and he's declared an emergency, going around Congress and allocating funds, or wants to allocate funds to building a border wall. Political science professor Jasmine Farrier, what do you think about that?
Well, there's no inherent emergency power in the text of the Constitution. So this is a subject that's been a long time of conversation and controversy. But in 1976, Congress did delegate power to declare such emergencies to presidents of the future. So that's really important to remember, that Congress in 1976 was dominated by Democrats. The president at the time is Gerald Ford. He's not a popular president. He's an opposition figure as a Republican. But as an institution, Congress was saying that presidents, plural, unknown presidents, should have the power to make this emergency declaration, and they gave themselves what was called a legislative veto. So what Congress said was presidents can make the declaration, but then Congress can overturn it by vote. The wrinkle came in 1983 when the Supreme Court, on an unrelated case, said that legislative vetoes are unconstitutional. So when Congress wants to stop something, they have to actually present it in the form of a joint resolution, which is similar to a bill, and it goes to the president. So what we're stuck with here is half of a reform. The intention that Congress had in 1976 was that there were many emergency declarations, even back to World War II, in effect. Congress was trying to actually start over, to end all of the existing so-called emergencies and start fresh with a new process. Since 1976, we've had about 31 different emergencies, maybe a few more.
Declared by different presidents, Democrat and Republicans.
And none have taken the form of this particular set of policy proposals. But nevertheless, here's the new process. The president gets to declare the emergency. The emergency is not defined in law. Congress gets the opportunity to say no through a joint resolution, which is similar to a bill.
If they choose to.
If they choose to, and the House chose to this week.
Okay.
It goes to the Senate, and although Leader McConnell controls the floor, he cannot prevent this vote from happening. It doesn't have to happen right away. It'll probably happen sometime in March. It might even go through a committee hearing to Senate Armed Services. Here's the rub. If the Senate passes it, they would need 4 Republicans to join 47 Democrats. Can't filibuster it, so you don't have to do a 60-vote margin. You with me?
So you got to have 51 votes.
Got to have 51 votes. It's called a simple majority.
Okay.
A lot of things can still be filibustered in the Senate. This is not one of them. Then it goes to the president. The president obviously will veto it because it's disapproving. So now Congress can
but they don't have enough votes to override a veto.
See?
So the bottom line, though, is back in '76, Democrats set in motion what we now have, a president believing at least that he has the constitutional authority to declare an emergency on the southern border.
Yes,
right?
And the only two things to remember are, one, in the Democrats' favor at that time, they were thinking institutionally to the extent that they gave themselves this legislative veto. They did not know that it was going to be overturned by the Supreme Court 7 years later. So
they thought there was a check and balance.
They did.
They thought they were given it until the courts overturned.
Right, and that's a whole separate issue, but there were hundreds of laws at the time. When the Supreme Court declared that kind of process unconstitutional, there were hundreds of laws that had the so-called legislative veto where the president would act and Congress could say no and then done. So the second problem, though, is delegating to the unknown. And Congress does this all the time. There's a more recent example.
Well, they need to stop that. As a former political reporter, I can say that.
Here's a great, interesting example. In 2008, we had our financial meltdown. You might remember the Wall Street bailout called TARP, Temporary Asset, something.
Whatever, yeah. Recovery program.
Recovery program.
Yeah.
So what Congress did was it gave to President Bush and the future Treasury Secretary, the current and future Treasury Secretary, powers to buy up toxic assets from firms that had some argument that if their demise would harm the economy. In 2008, when this was passed, John McCain and Barack Obama are neck and neck. Congress, Democrat dominated, may I remind you. Also delegated to the unknown because it wasn't even clear who would be president, let alone who that person would choose as a Treasury Secretary. So this is something that happens quite often.
So, again, we're talking with Jasmine Farrier, who's a political science professor at the University of Louisville, and we're talking about what's going on in Washington right now. We'll talk about her new book that's coming up here after the break. But so what we're talking about, though, right now is Congress essentially leaving their powers to a president. Essentially allowing a president to have more power than the Constitution perhaps wanted the president to have.
Well, this is tricky. The Constitution is not very specific about presidential powers. So the cliche in political science is that all presidents of either party in the modern era claim all the silences of the Constitution. It would be as if your children said to you, "Oh, Dad, I didn't know I couldn't do it." Well, then you should stop me. So in other words, thinking about the word executive. Executive is the root word to execute. That's Article 2. The executioner is not the judge and the jury. The executioner is the person who is just carrying out the order. So throughout American history, we've had types of executives, usually in the 19th century and the 1800s, who were the going second type of president. They're waiting for orders from Congress. The 20th century reversed it. The Constitution is still the same. Article 1 is legislative, Article 2 is execution. But modern presidents have said, I'm the only nationally elected person. Congress is divided and dysfunctional, let's be honest. That often is true. He has an obligation to his voters. He has the national perspective. He's an international figure as well. So he argues that he has the right to punch out the walls, the ceilings, and the floor of his institution until stopped.
And so what do you think, the bottom line, we'll talk about the wall topic here, and then we'll move on to something else after the break. But what do you think the framers of the Constitution wanted to happen in terms of the balance of power and the president having the ability to call emergencies?
Well, the founders were under the assumption that all politicians had a measure of ambition that was personal, and they wanted to harness that for good. So they wouldn't try to say to anybody, don't be ambitious. What they tried to get individual politicians to do is to harness their personal ambition to their institution's ambition. The House member fights for the House. The senator fights for the Senate. Together they fight for the Congress. The president fights for the presidency, and judges fight for the court. That makes sense, except the Congress part is not happening. So members of Congress are not fighting for Congress. They're only fighting for Congress when the other party controls the White House. So Mark Meadows said on the House floor this week, hey, Democrats, he's a Republican, he said, stop lecturing us on hypocrisy. If this were Obama, you would let him do it too. By the way, you did let him do all sorts of things. So don't lecture us now on what we're not supposed to do for our president.
Now we're going to talk about her new book that she's got coming out here shortly. What's the book called?
The book is called Constitutional Dysfunction on Trial, Congressional Lawsuits and Separation of Powers.
Shouldn't it be congressional dysfunction on trial?
But there's more. So
but wait, there's more.
There's always more. But wait, I'll throw in 2 more branches for free.
Okay.
Congressional dysfunction is exacerbated by executive branch dysfunction, which is along the lines of what we're talking about, which is presidents of both parties, when they're candidates, promise to not do the overreach that their predecessors did. Then they do them anyway. So
Well, of course, they're in power. I mean...
Yes, but Congress, again, is very ambivalent about when and how to use their powers. They're very keen to use them against opposition presidents. They're not as keen to use them against their own presidents. Here's the interesting extra ingredient. Where do the courts fit in? So my book looks at the history of congressional lawsuits. When Congress members or the institution of the House or the Senate decides to sue in federal court to get something that they couldn't get through legislative means.
Like some House members and governors are doing with President Trump right now. They're saying
Yes.
President Trump to block his emergency order.
So this is the interesting ingredient, is the court. So what I'm arguing is that the court's disinterest in taking these kinds of cases has some rational basis, because the court would say, why are you coming to me to solve a problem that you could solve for yourself? And so they don't want to get in the middle of this type of constitutional fight, because they argue that Congress has not maxed out their weapons in their arsenal. Once they do that, and if the president disobeys, well, then you have a case and you have an injury. The courts don't like to take everything that comes its way. The courts like to be picky, because they would say, if you have an injury and we're the only place where you can go to solve it, that's very different from failing to buck up and use your institutional weapons.
All right, put on your big boy pants.
Here's the problem, though.
Mr. and Mrs. Congresswoman
Exactly.
and man.
But here's the problem with courts. When they say no, they're really saying yes. Because if they reject a case, like these attorneys general, if they reject a case that members of Congress pursue, what they're really doing inadvertently is they're stamping judicial approval on the action.
Which means what? In
Well,
common man's lingo, does that mean they're giving, basically saying, hey, the president can do what he wants, and as long as you guys don't mess with him and don't pass any laws to restrict his power and stand up for yourselves and the balance of power in the United States government, we're not going to do anything about that.
That's right. But the inadvertent outcome is that they're essentially saying it's fine. So here's an example. If a president wants to go and bomb a country and say it's under the 2001 authorization for the use of military force, and Congress doesn't like that, they're saying, well, actually, we never authorized it in the first place. Well, the president says, so sue me. So let's say the Congress members do. The Congress members will be told by the court, here's what you do. You don't have a case right now. Why don't you go back and disapprove? He'll veto that. Then you have to overcome the veto. If he's still fighting in that country, now you have something. Come back. Well, what did that do to Congress? Now they have to have a supermajority to stop something that they never authorized in the first place. So when the court says no, again, they're really saying something profound about the constitutional order of operations.
So I think what you're saying in this instance right now, as we sit here today, the bottom line is if Democratic members of Congress were to go to court to try and block President Trump, they may get a ruling from the courts that they'll rue the day later on. And Republicans will too.
Yes.
Members of Congress.
Right. So the court will say, most likely, we have a wall of precedent where we have said time and again, stop coming here and shopping around to do the things that you could do for yourself.
Okay. I got cut you off because I got two quick questions
Sure.
before we wrap up here. One, how dysfunctional is Congress right now, in your opinion? Is it very dysfunctional, or is it the same as it's always been?
Congress is an interesting place to discuss dysfunction because it wasn't meant to work very smoothly in the first place.
Right.
So the House and Senate are currently held by different parties. That's because they are all independently elected on a different schedule. The founders would not necessarily be upset. They didn't want Congress to be the overbearing branch, so they divided it in two and made these siblings look very much unlike each other in electoral function, and then they have compounded that by having different rules and customs and culture. So yes, maybe that is a tad dysfunctional. Parties are meant to glue the whole thing back together if voters are consistent. If voters want to see X done, well then stick with one party and run with it. You want to have big majorities? Think about the 30s, the 60s, the middle 4 years of the Bush administration. If we really like that, we wouldn't constantly be going back and forth.
Turn it over. And last question, does the president have too much power? Not just President Trump, but any president in the United States right now, because Congress is abdicating their duties?
Well, does the president really represent the whole nation and the nation's interest? Because under my recollection, millions of people did not vote for the president or any of them.
The majority.
Right. So let's think about this. Congress actually represents both parties. Congress represents all 50 states. Congress has a winner. Maybe not everybody voted for that winner, but they have a winner for 435 districts. Congress is actually more politically diverse, and maybe the accumulation of those different perspectives, however they manage to do it, is a more faithful view of the national interest than one man from one party, from one set of ideas, from one set of states.
We'll end on that thought, because that's a good one.
Thank
Jasmine Farrier, thanks for being on the show. Every year, there are a couple of students from the university who are picked as Mr. and Ms. Cardinal. The winners must document their love of UofL and commitment to campus and community involvement. And this year's Mr. and Ms. Cardinal are Tipton and Masden Griffiths, and they're here to chat with us today. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you for
Are you
having
going to
us.
say
Thank you so
something?
much. Thank you so much for
Come on,
having
you're
us.
supposed to have some personality if you're Mr. and Ms. Cardinal. Come on.
I was letting ladies go first, so
Oh, so it's
goodness, the
Masden's
pressure's
fault.
on. Here we
Yeah,
go.
there you go. All right. So, all right. We'll let the ladies go first then. Masden, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, well, I'm Masden Griffiths. I'm from Greensburg, Kentucky. I'm studying political science and sport administration here at UofL. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Chris?
I'm Chris Tipton. I'm from Louisville. I went to Trinity High School. Go Rocks! I'm studying biology and psychology, and I'll be attending UofL Med School next summer. once
Congratulations
July
on
starts.
that one. And Masden, you've applied for law school, right?
Yes, sir. So I've been admitted a little bit all over the place, and we'll see. We'll toss a coin probably on April 1st and see what happens.
So you're graduating in May, and so you got to find a place to land as home, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Got it.
Have you been accepted in any law schools?
Yes, I've been accepted at Arizona State, the University of Miami in Florida, and Brandeis here in Louisville so far.
Okay. So two really warm places and your love of your life, Louisville, right?
Yes, in the love of my life. Exactly.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, let's talk about what is Mr. and Ms. Cardinal. How do you get to be Mr. and Ms. Cardinal 2019?
Their pity.
Somebody's pity. They chose
Somebody's-
you.
yeah.
They pitied you. Okay.
So
Seriously though.
it was described to us as kind of like the highest award for an outstanding senior male and female from the class of 2019. Just kind of, they try to have like the most well-rounded people, so people that not only are involved on campus and that do well academically, but people who also serve the Louisville community and campus.
Okay.
And there was an application interview process, and then we were told a little bit after the interview process, and then it took off from there.
Okay. So did you guys apply, or did somebody nominate you, or how'd that work?
We had to apply.
You had to apply for it.
Yes.
Okay.
And we had to write an essay and all that.
Well, this
fun
is like a
stuff.
class. That
Yeah,
become,
basically.
yeah.
Okay. So what does it mean if you're Mr. and Ms. Cardinal? Do you have to go to certain functions, or do you just talk to me, or what happens?
Only you.
Yeah, just you. And we got to, meet Dr. Bindapudi at the center of the court at one of the basketball games, which was really awesome. So.
Okay. But you have to have the bottom line is you have to have a real love for the University of Louisville. You have to do community service and those kinds of things, right?
Yep,
All right. So let's talk a little bit about what you do then. All right, Masden, on campus. Let's start with on campus. What do you do on campus? What are you involved in?
I work for the Office of Admissions as a Cardinal guide, so I give tours to people from all over the place, especially specifically with high school students. Then I also work with the Office of Communications and Marketing as a Cardinal ambassador. That job, I work in the information center, so anybody that's lost on campus, I'm your girl. I can tell you how to get there, where to park, all that stuff. And then I also serve as a peer advisor, so I've helped students schedule their classes. I've got to teach a couple of classes, which is really nice. And then I also work for the football team. So
What do you do for the football team?
I work in recruiting, so I'm constantly watching high school film. I get to actually talk to the recruits when they come in for visits and their families and sell them on the University of Louisville.
Oh, so it's not really the coaches who are out recruiting. It's Masden Griffiths who is out getting these athletes to come
Basically,
to
I'm
the
gonna
University
pull
of
my
Louisville, right?
coach's hat on.
And
Yeah,
you're watching
exactly.
film. All these coaches talk about film sessions. You're actually in on film sessions watching high school athletes?
I get to do a lot of that. Yeah, my dad was a football coach, so I've grown up with it my whole life. I thought I was going to get away from football whenever I came here, and I actually started that job before I started my first day of classes. So, love football.
All right. Well, Chris Tipton, what do you do on campus? What are some of your on-campus activities?
I've served as a small group tutor for the Learning Resource Center at the new building. We call it the BAB. I've worked with REACH as an SI leader. I've helped teach a Bio 240 class, which is one of those huge 300 student lectures that freshmen take. It's kind of a weed-out class. I am involved in Beta Theta Pi fraternity, Phi Delta Epsilon pre-medical fraternity, the Biology Undergraduate Student Association, and
So you both got a lot of stuff going on campus.
just a little
A
bit.
little bit.
And
Few
you're both
things here and there.
seniors, right?
Yeah.
So how do you find time to do all this stuff?
Coffee.
Yeah.
Well, that's staying away.
Yeah. It's more just about learning how to prioritize and just making time for what's important to you. If it's something that's important to me, I'm gonna squeeze it in. It doesn't really matter if I slept for 4 hours or not. It'll happen during the day. And I basically live a color-coded life with my planner in my hands. So, yeah.
Are you that well organized, Chris?
I'm not color-coded. I have a planner, but it is not color-coded. My planner keeps me up with tests, meetings, and that's about it.
Okay. And both of you, I've seen you both at UofL basketball games, right? Right now, obviously, Masden, you go to the football games. Do you both go to the football games?
I would go to a few football games when I could, when I didn't have a test the next day or the next week.
Okay.
I've never missed a single one. I even missed a wedding to go to a football game. So.
Okay. Well, what's your favorite sports on U of L's campus? What do you go to?
I actually really like women's basketball. I know that's
too.
Really it's
No,
such
I'm season ticket holder.
It's such an exciting environment, and it's one of the things that I get to boast about on tours all the time is how all of our sports for our students are totally for free, with the exception of football and men's basketball. So I mean, why would you not go and kind of delve into all those? I will enjoy baseball when it gets a little bit warmer. Right now, I'm not about it, but yeah, I need it to be hot outside.
Chris, you're a big basketball fan, right?
Big basketball fan. My grandfather played basketball here back in the 40s, so it's really nice when we get to take him to games. He's 92 now, so it's kind of difficult sometimes, but he made it out to the game that we were presented with the award at half court, which is awesome. I also love soccer and baseball just because those are free to students and they're right on campus, so those are really available. It's just fun to get a couple of friends to go to those.
Okay. All right. Again, we're talking with Chris Tipton and Masden Griffiths, who are the Mr. and Ms. Cardinal 2018-2019, representing the university in their respective capacities. Masden, how'd you get here from Greene County, Kentucky?
So whenever I was doing my college search, I kind of was looking for something the exact opposite of the way I grew up. I grew up in a town of about 10,000 people, so I didn't want to go too far away from home. And so I was like, this is a perfect combination. It's the exact opposite. It's the city life. There's always the hustle and bustle going on. And I just saw a lot of opportunities here to take advantage of.
All right. Chris, you stayed in town. Why?
Family, mostly. Grandfather went here. He said it was up to me, but there's always a little bit of push, a little bit of bias. My sister also went here. She is 4 years older than I am. She just graduated from Brandeis Law School, actually.
Okay.
So there was that pressure as well, but they definitely left it up to me, and I've loved every minute of it.
Okay, now you're going to UofL Medical School, right?
UofL Medical School, yes, sir.
Congratulations again on getting into the medical school. That ain't easy.
Neither is law school.
Yeah, neither is law school. All right, and off campus, we've asked you about what you do on campus. What are some of your off campus activities, your community service, those kinds of things that you two are involved in?
One of the things that I've done all 4 years here, I played volleyball in high school. In middle school, I played for a super long time, and I wanted to find a way to still be involved with the sport, even though I couldn't play at the college level because I'm 4'10". The vertical challenge is so real.
Yeah, she genuinely is very short, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you listening on radio. But she's a ball of fire.
I was going to say I compensate with my personality. I try anyway. Yeah. But I actually was able to become a Kentucky High School Athletic Association referee, and so I officiate games all over the city, which has really it's a big thing that's made Louisville home for me. And then I also have taken part in this program called She Became. One of my friends here on this campus actually started this nonprofit organization, and so I've been able to tutor girls at elementary schools around the community as well.
Very cool. Chris?
Yeah.
I've spent times volunteering and shadowing a lot of places. So volunteering, I've spent time with Supplies Overseas, the Center for Women and Families, Louisville Grows, which is where you go plant a food forest for areas that may not have fresh produce regularly. Excuse me. And then for shadowing, I've shadowed at Louisville Hospital and then Norton Children's as well.
So I guess that just goes to show that how much involvement the U of L students have. I mean, we just had Raise Red last weekend, where the U of L students raised $682,000 for pediatric cancer research, and there's a number of these student-led organizations and things going on out in the community and on campus, trying to do good out there. And you guys are the epitome of that. So thank you for your service. What are some of the things now that you're seniors? You're looking back. It's in the rearview mirror, your undergraduate time here at the University of Louisville. What are some of the things that you're going to remember and talk about in 20 years about the University of Louisville, perhaps? What would you say?
Oh, I would just say how it's like a big, small town. I came from a small town, and I was like, everybody knows everybody. I wanted to get away from that, or I thought I did. I thought that was something that I didn't enjoy. I came to Louisville and immediately found a community that was a lot the same. I think that I've heard Chris say that before, that he couldn't walk from one end of campus to the other without seeing a warm, welcoming face of someone that he knew. And I think that's just one of the coolest things ever about this place. And even with the faculty and staff. They're people that have been here for a long time. They have a vested interest in this community, and they've all, like I said, they've all been here for a long time. And I hope that I can come back in a few years and see the exact same thing or same feel on this campus.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say the exact same thing. It's just the people that make UofL home. It's students, my friends, but also the workers here. There's 2 lunch ladies, Miss Virginia, Miss Sandra, that every time they see me, they kind of just like walk over to me and make me hug them, basically. They'll like sit there until I hug them. And they say, Chris, I hope you have a wonderful day. And it's stuff like that. The janitor at the library knows me by name. He's bought me coffee. It's just stuff like that you don't find, that you just cannot find anywhere else, that makes Louisville home, and that I will look back on with.
Yeah. And Masden, do you share those kind of stories with students who are coming to take a visit on campus?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's like a question that I get all the time. They're like, so what sets this place apart? And every single time I answer with the people. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. Everybody knows Mr. Jim. He's basically
I know everybody knows Mr. Jim. I know
yeah,
Mr.
he's
Jim.
a campus celebrity. Like my friends and I were actually at El Nepal last week. And he and his family, I got to meet Mr. Jim's entire family. So I basically feel like that was the culmination of my college career. I know Mr. Jim, I know his daughter, I know his grandchildren. It's all well.
So you ought to describe who Mr. Jim is. Tell him who Mr. Jim is.
I know who Mr. Jim is, but I was not at El Nepal, so I have not had the pleasure of
but who is
meeting
Mr. Jim?
Mr.
Tell him,
so
for
Mr.
people on the radio
Jim,
who have no idea who Mr. Jim
he's
is.
kind of bumped around to a lot of the different restaurants on campus, but he kind of is like a server. So if you order food and like you are eating or dining in, he'll actually like bring you your food and make conversation. So even if you're eating by yourself, you're never really by yourself with Mr. Jim.
That's right. He'll just talk to you, and he's the friendliest guy on campus, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's a campus celebrity. You get on Twitter anytime, you can type in Mr. Jim, he's going to come up.
That's probably true. All right. So going forward, what do you tell folks? You've already talked about your experience at the University of Louisville. So when you're telling your family about the University of Louisville, what do you tell them was the one thing that you'll remember, perhaps an incident or something like that, or maybe there was something stupid that happened, during your 4 years that you're going, no, I can't believe I did that, but that's something that's in your memory banks.
This. Mr. Cardinal is just one of those things I can't believe that it's actually happening.
Yeah, so you can go back in 20 years and look and say, hey, I was Mr. Cardinal back in 2019.
Oh, I'm building a man cave to this.
Oh yeah, we have these blankets that are super huge, and I told my mom, I was like, I want it hung up. I want my own version of my man cave, but with all of my UofL garb. So
do you get a coat that says Mr. Cardinal or Miss Cardinal on it? Do you get any garb to go with this?
Actually,
or anything?
you should make that request that we should get a crown. I want a scepter too. Like I can. or a letter jacket would be really cool with like the cardinal head on it, like the ones that the football players get. I would be all about that.
I'm thinking more like the NFL draft where they get the lining of a coat done. If we can get a specialized coat with the lining of it,
and you can open it up,
I'd be about it.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. I don't think that's going to happen, Chris, but you never know. You can talk to Dr. Bendabuti about it. Maybe she can make that happen for you.
She would be about it, I think.
If she's out there, please.
She would probably be about that. All right. Well, congratulations to both of you. You're great representatives of the University of Louisville. Good luck in law school, Masden. Good luck in medical school, Chris. And we've loved having you here on campus.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Go Cards.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap up with a little Did You Know segment about the University of Louisville. Did you know Dr. Amy Acklin, the Associate Director of Bands at UofL and the Director of the Cardinal Marching Band, was named the 2019 Kentucky Music Educators Association University College Teacher of the Year. So congratulations to our pal, Amy Acklin, with the UofL Marching Band. That'll about do it for this edition of UofL Today with Mark Hebert, which you can hear every Monday and Tuesday night at 6 on 93.9 The Ville. You can also catch the podcast on SoundCloud and watch some of the programs on Metro TV or KETKY throughout the week. Or you can just go to UofL's YouTube channel anytime. Check out all the UofL news, events, and videos at UofLnews.com. Thanks for listening to UofL Today with Mark Hebert, and go Cards!